If London ignores the exit treaty, Dublin will have to choose between a West Brexit and a hard border with Northern Ireland. If Great Britain breaks the Brexit treaty, this could mean that Ireland has to protect the EU internal market with border controls. Irish EU expert Daniel Keohane explained the consequences of such an escalation and why it would plunge Dublin into a dilemma to a Swiss newspaper. With a market law, Great Britain wants to create the possibility of repealing parts of the Northern Ireland Protocol in the withdrawal agreement signed in 2019. What reaction did that spark in Ireland? And I know I have a lot of Irish viewers. I really appreciate your opinion on this video, especially this time. Of course, I always appreciate it, and of all the others, but especially to this video, really leave a comment about this. Because as far as we know, the reactions from Dublin were extremely harsh. It was precisely the aim of the EU and Great Britain to find a weatherproof solution in the withdrawal agreement in order to avoid a regulatory and a customs border on the Irish island in any case, regardless of whether it comes to a soft or hard Brexit. That is why London had committed itself to controls in the Irish Sea between the British Isles and Northern Ireland. It took decades to negotiate the Good Friday Agreement to end the Northern Ireland conflict, and breaking the withdrawal treaty would destroy fragile trust. The Market Act only affects declarations of Northern Irish exports to Great Britain and state aid on the British Isles. Isn't the Irish fear exaggerated? From a purely technical point of view, these two elements would probably not immediately lead to a hard limit. However, we do not know how far the UK government would take the breach or what will be in the understanding of the UK finance bill. The EU now fears that London will not be able to impose tariffs on goods arriving in Northern Ireland from the British Isles. Overall, a breach of contract would not only lead to a legal battle between Brussels and London. Rather, the question arises of how the EU could protect its internal market and enforce its external tariffs. If the UK doesn't guarantee this, Ireland will have to. What would Dublin do if the Brexit transition period expires on January 1st, 2021, as it will? Nobody really knows, as the Irish government is keeping a low profile for political reasons. They assert that they do not want to set up a regulatory and customs border between Northern Ireland and the Irish Republic. This is not just about the peace process. The cross-border economy is also based on the common EU rules. The temptation for Dublin would be great to do nothing at first and to hope that new negotiations between London and Brussels would clear up the situation within a few months. But if it turns out that food and industrial products that are approved in the EU are being smuggled into the internal market, the EU will put pressure on Ireland to carry out controls. If London ignores the exit agreement, Dublin will have to choose between a so-called West Brexit and a hard border to Northern Ireland. But what does that mean exactly? It would be easiest not to locate the controls on the border with Northern Ireland, but at the ports where the goods leave Ireland for the rest of the EU. But that would in fact lead to a West Brexit. Ireland would lose its unhindered access to the internal market and would no longer be a full EU member. Dublin will not be able to accept that. This brings us back to the controls on the land border with Northern Ireland. This has almost 300 crossings. That is more than on the entire eastern border of the EU, and therefore cannot be checked across the board. During the Northern Ireland conflict, most of these little streets were closed and the British government only controlled around 30 crossings. Could the government in Dublin even politically afford to block border crossings? There are still violent factions of the IRA, and it remains to be seen whether these border posts set up by Ireland would be attacked then. But there would certainly be great tensions, because the last thing people in the border region want are blocked crossings and new hurdles. Of course, the government could argue that Britain has broken its word, a narrative that many Irish people find fertile ground for historical reasons alone. Nevertheless, it would be up to the EU and the Irish government to implement these extremely unpopular measures. For Dublin, it would be a huge mess. Ireland had nothing to say about Brexit, but is now having to grapple with the consequences. Dublin and Brussels are therefore in the weaker negotiating position on this point. But this is only half the truth. Because quite apart from the economic consequences, the UK would also do itself enormous political damage if it simply passed a treaty under international law and Brexit. It will be clear to everyone who is to blame, since the government in London has already admitted the breach of international law. And the UK is good in the blame game, but in this case they would be the losers of the blame game. And this strengthens the position of the EU and Ireland. And is Ireland hoping for Joe Biden to win the election? Biden and the Democratic Majority Leader in the House of Representatives, Nancy Pelosi, have threatened to block a free trade agreement with London if Brexit puts the Good Friday Agreement at risk. There's a lot of support for the Good Friday Agreement from both Democrats and Republicans in the United States. Donald Trump's envoy in Northern Ireland has made the same statement as Pelosi. If London breaks the exit agreement, forcing Dublin to carry out border controls, Washington will side with Ireland, without any doubt. But how do you rate the chances that a breach of the withdrawal agreement can be averted? Well, some people are reasonably confident if a trade deal between the EU and the UK is reached. The EU has now initiated infringement proceedings against London, but has not broken off the free trade negotiations at the moment. And recently there have been little but still positive signals. The EU and Ireland will only sign a trade agreement if London removes the controversial passages from the market law, and the same applies to the European Parliament. They made it very, very clear as well. But even from a British point of view, there would be no point in sabotaging duty-free access to the EU market with legal disputes and a breach of trust. And the Irish expert on European and security policy, Daniel Keohane, is a senior research fellow at Dublin City University and an associated fellow at the London think tank Centre for European Reform. And he gave an interview to the Neue Zürcher Zeitung, which I based my video on this time. If you're interested in more European or global politics, there's a button to subscribe to my channel so you will know when I publish another one. And if you want to see one right now, YouTube has chosen another of my videos right here for you in the end screen. I'll see you in my next video. Click and enjoy. Viel Spaß!